The dust on Kepler 442 be never settled. It hung in the air like a fine mist, making everything look hazy and old. Dr. Maya Rodriguez wiped her face with the back of her glove and looked down at the hole she had been digging for 3 days. The planet was quiet except for the soft hum of the excavation equipment and the distant wind that never seemed to stop. Maya had been working on this dig site for 2 months now. She was looking for artifacts from the old war, the one that happened 100 years ago. Most people called it the Battle of Kepler's Ridge, and it was the first time humans had fought aliens in space. The Zephyrians had come from somewhere, far away, with ships that could destroy whole cities and weapons that could melt steel like butter. The battle had been terrible. Thousands of human soldiers had died trying to defend the small colonies on this planet. In the end, the humans had won, but barely. Many soldiers were listed as missing, their bodies never found. The official report said they had been vaporized by alien weapons, turned to dust and blown away by the wind, but Maya did not believe that. She was a scientist who studied old battlefields, and she had learned that battlefields always kept their secrets. Sometimes those secrets were buried deep, waiting for someone patient enough to find them. Her team was small. There was Carlos Martinez, who flew their ship and helped with the heavy digging. There was also Lisa Park, who was good with computers and scanning equipment. They had been working together for 3 years, moving from one old battlefield to another, trying to understand what had really happened during the war. Dr. Rodriguez, Lisa called from her position near the scanning equipment, "I'm getting something strange over here." Mayao climbed out of the hole and walked over to where Lisa was standing. The young woman was frowning at her computer screen. Tapping it with one finger like that might make it work better. "What kind of strange?" Maya asked. "There's something metallic about 6 feet down, right where you've been digging. But it's not just metal, it's giving off some kind of signal." Maya felt her heart beat faster. In all her years of digging up old battlefields, she had never found anything that was still sending signals. Metal rusted, electronics died, and batteries run out of power. Nothing lasted 100 years buried in alien soil. "Are you sure?" Maya asked. Lisa nodded. "The signal is weak, but it's definitely there. It's like something is trying to talk." Carlos walked over, carrying his digging tools. He was a big man with gentle hands who could move tons of dirt and still be careful enough not to break a small piece of glass. "You want me to dig it up?" he asked. Maya thought for a moment. She had been disappointed many times before. Usually, the things they found were just broken pieces of old equipment, worthless junk that told them nothing important. But something about this felt different. "Yes," she said. "But be very careful." Carlos nodded and climbed down into the hole. Maya and Lisa watched as he began to dig, moving the dirt one small shovelful at a time. The scanning equipment beeped steadily, letting them know he was getting close to whatever was buried there. After an hour, Carlos stopped digging. "I can see it," he said, his voice excited. "It looks like a helmet." Maya's breath caught in her throat. A helmet meant a soldier. A soldier meant someone who had died here, someone who had been fighting to protect the colonies. She climbed down into the hole next to Carlos. The helmet was buried in the dirt, but she could see part of it now. It was made of dark metal that looked almost black, with scratches and dents that told the story of hard fighting. But what made Maya's hands shake was that she could see lights on it. Tiny blue lights that were still blinking after 100 years. "Impossible," she whispered. Carlos helped her brush the dirt away from the helmet. It was a standard military combat helmet from the old war, the kind that had built-in computers and communication systems. But this one was different. The lights were not just blinking randomly. They were making a pattern, like they were trying to say something. Maya lifted the helmet carefully out of the dirt. It was heavier than she expected, and she could feel something humming inside it, like a machine that was still working. She turned it over in her hands, looking for markings that would tell her who it had belonged to. On the back, scratched into the metal, she found what she was looking for. "SGT, Jake Morrison, 7th Colonial Defense Unit," Lisa gasped. "Jake Morrison?" "I know that name." Everyone knows that name, Maya said quietly. He was one of the heroes of the Battle of Kepler's Ridge. His unit held the line for 6 hours against impossible odds. He saved 3 colonies before he disappeared. Maya looked at the helmet again. The lights were still blinking, still making their pattern. She realized that the pattern was not random at all. It was code, military code from the old war. "Lisa, can you hook this up to your computer?" Maya asked. "I want to know what it's trying to say." Lisa nodded and brought over a cable that would connect the helmet to her equipment. As soon as she plugged it in, her computer screen filled with text. Most of it was military jargon and technical information, but at the bottom there was a message that made Maya's blood run cold. "Find me, I'm alive." The 3 of them stared at the screen in silence. The message was time-stamped, and according to the computer, it had been sent just 12 hours ago. "That's impossible," Carlos said. "Jake Morrison died 100 years ago. Everyone knows that." But Maya was thinking about all the stories she had heard about the Battle of Kepler's Ridge, stories that did not match the official reports. Stories about a soldier who had appeared at different parts of the battlefield, always when the fighting was worst, always when hope was almost gone. Stories about impossible victories and last-minute saves. She had always thought they were just stories, the kind of legends that grew up around any big battle. But now, holding Jake Morrison's helmet in her hands, feeling the machine inside it, still working after a century, she was not so sure. "We need to find out where this signal is coming from," she said. Lisa typed commands into her computer, trying to trace the signal back to its source. The helmet's computer was old, but it was still connected to some kind of network that Maya did not understand. The signal was bouncing from place to place, making it hard to track. "It's moving," Lisa said, her voice puzzled. "The signal is coming from different locations. First it was 3 star systems away, then it jumped to somewhere near the outer colonies, and now it's coming from somewhere in deep space." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. A signal that moved around like that could only mean one thing. Someone was carrying Jake Morrison's equipment. Someone who was still alive and still moving through space. "We have to follow it," she said. Carlos and Lisa looked at her like she was crazy. "Dr. Rodriguez," Carlos said gently, "Jake Morrison has been dead for 100 years. This has to be some kind of mistake." But Maya was already thinking about their ship, about how much fuel they had, about how far they could travel before they had to turn back. She was thinking about all the stories she had heard, all the impossible things that had happened during the war. "Maybe he's not dead," she said. "Maybe he's been out there all this time, waiting for someone to find him." She looked at the helmet. Again, at the lights that were still blinking their message. "Find me, I'm alive." "We're going to find him," she said. 3 days after finding the helmet, Maya's team was aboard their ship, the Explorer, flying through space toward the signal's last known location. The ship was small but fast, designed for research missions that could take them far from Earth. Carlos sat in the pilot's seat, his big hands moving carefully over the controls. Lisa was at her computer station, watching the signal from Jake Morrison's helmet as it moved across her screen like a ghost. Maya sat in the captain's chair, holding the helmet in her lap. She had not let it out of her sight since they found it. The blue lights still blinked their message, and every few hours the signal would jump to a new location, sometimes hundreds of light years away. "It jumped again," Lisa said, her voice tired. They had been following the signal for 3 days now, and each time they got close, it would disappear and reappear somewhere else. "This time it's near the Proxima system." "That's where the old mining colony used to be," Carlos said. "Colony 7. It was attacked during the war, but I thought everyone there was killed." Maya looked at the helmet. The scratches on its surface told the story of hard fighting, but she was starting to think they told more than that. She was starting to think they told the story of many fights, in many places, over many years. "Change course for Proxima," she said. "And Carlos, push the engines as hard as you can. I have a feeling we're always going to be one step behind this signal." The flight to Proxima took 18 hours. When they arrived, the system looked dead. The star was old and red, casting a weak light on the rocky planets that circled it. Colony 7 had been built on the third planet, but all Maya could see through the ship's windows was empty space where the colony should have been. "The colony's gone," Carlos said, checking his instruments. "But I'm picking up some debris in orbit. Looks like pieces of buildings and ships." "Take us closer," Maya said as they flew toward the debris field. Lisa's equipment started beeping. "I'm getting something," she said. "Not the helmet signal, but something else. It's like an old recording, very faint." Maya felt her heart speed up. "Can you play it?" Lisa worked at her computer for several minutes, trying to clean up the signal. Finally, she managed to get it clear enough to hear. A man's voice came through the speakers, rough and tired, but still strong. "This is Sergeant Jake Morrison, 7th Colonial Defense Unit. Colony 7 has been evacuated. All civilians are safe. Zephyrian forces have been repelled. Repeat, Colony 7 is secure." The recording was dated 15 years ago. Maya stared at the speakers. Jake Morrison had been at Colony 7 15 years ago, long after he was supposed to be dead, but the colony had been destroyed during the original war, 100 years ago. So how could he have been there to defend it again? "That's impossible," Carlos said. Colony 7 was destroyed in the First War. There was nothing left to defend. But Lisa was already scanning the debris field with her equipment. "Wait," she said. "I'm finding something strange. Some of this debris is 100 years old, from the original battle. But some of it is much newer. Like there were two separate battles here, decades apart." Maya thought about the stories she had heard about Jake Morrison. Stories about a soldier who appeared when things looked hopeless, who could turn the tide of any battle. She had always thought they were just legends, but now she was starting to wonder if they were something else. Something impossible. "Set course for the next signal location," she said. Over the next 2 weeks, they followed the signal from system to system. Each place they visited told the same story. Old battlefields where Jake Morrison had fought 100 years ago, but also evidence of more recent battles. Colonists who had been saved by a mysterious soldier, who appeared when the fighting was worst and disappeared when it was over. At the Titan station, they found an old woman named Betty who remembered Jake Morrison from 20 years ago. She was 93 years old and lived alone in a small habitat on the edge of the station. "Oh yes, I remember him," she said, offering Maya and her team cups of tea. "Tall fellow, always wore that black helmet. He saved us when the Zephyrians came." "Must have been 20 years ago now? We thought we were all going to die. What did he look like?" Maya asked. Betty smiled. "Same as he did during the First War. I was just a little girl then, you know. My parents used to tell me stories about Sergeant Morrison. When I saw him 20 years ago, he looked exactly the same, not a day older." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Exactly the same. "Oh yes. Same face, same uniform, same helmet. Even had the same scratches on his armor. Like he had stepped out of a history book." They left Titan Station with more questions than answers. The signal from Jake's helmet kept jumping around, but Maya was starting to see a pattern. It always appeared near human colonies that were under attack or in danger. It always disappeared after the danger was over. "He's protecting them," Maya said one night as they sat in the ship's common area, eating dinner. "Somehow, Jake Morrison is still out there, still fighting the war." "But how?" Lisa asked. "People don't live for 100 years without aging, and how does he get from place to place so fast?" Even with the best ships, it would take weeks to travel between some of these locations. Maya looked at the helmet, which sat on the table between them. The lights were still blinking, still sending their message. "I don't know. But I think we're going to find out." The next morning, Lisa woke them up with urgent news. "The signal has stopped jumping," she sighed. "It's been in the same location for 12 hours now, and I think I know where it is." Maya and Carlos gathered around Lisa's computer. On the screen was a map of local space, with a small red dot marking the signal's location. "It's in the void," Lisa said, "deep space between the Centauri and Volf systems. There's nothing out there. No planets, no stations, nothing. Maya studied the map. The void was a region of empty space that ships only passed through when they were traveling between systems. There was no reason for anyone to stop there, no reason for Jake Morrison to be there unless he had no choice. How far? Maya asked. 2 days at maximum speed, Carlos said. But Maya, if there's nothing out there, what are we going to find? Maya picked up the helmet and held it in her hands. The metal was warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight. She could feel the machine inside it working, could almost hear it thinking. We're going to find Jake Morrison, she said. And we're going to find out what happened to him. Carlos started the engines, and the explorer turned toward the void. As they accelerated away from the nearest star, Maya watched the darkness ahead of them grow larger. Somewhere out there, in the empty space between worlds, a soldier who should have been dead for 100 years was waiting for them. She just hoped they would find him before it was too late. The helmet's lights blinked faster now, like a heartbeat that was running out of time. Maya held it closer and whispered to it, even though she felt foolish doing so. We're coming, Jake. Hold on, we're coming. In the darkness ahead, something was waiting. Something that had been waiting for a very long time. The ship drifted through the darkness of the void, its engines quiet. Maya stood at the front window, looking out at the empty space around them. There were no stars close enough to give much light, just the faint glow of distant suns that looked like tiny dots against the black. I'm getting something on the scanners, Lisa said from her station. It's big. Carlos looked at his instruments and frowned. How big? Really big, like a battleship, maybe bigger. It's about 10 kilometers ahead of us. Maya felt her heart start to beat faster. Nothing should be out here in the void. No planets, no stations, no ships. But the signal from Jake Morrison's helmet was coming from whatever was out there in the darkness. Can you see it? Maya asked. Carlos adjusted the ship's lights, pointing them forward into the black. At first, Maya could see nothing. Then, slowly, a shape began to appear. It was huge, much bigger than their small research ship. It looked like a battleship, but not like any battleship Maya had ever seen. It's ancient, Lisa whispered. The design is old, maybe from the First War, but it's not human. Maya stared at the ship. It was long and curved, with strange patterns carved into its hull. The metal looked dark and worn, like it had been floating in space for a very long time. But there were lights on it, dim but steady, showing that something inside was still working. It's Zephyrian, Carlos said. That's an alien ship. Maya picked up Jake Morrison's helmet. The lights on it were blinking faster now, and she could feel it getting warmer in her hands. The signal was definitely coming from the alien ship. How is Jake Morrison on a Zephyrian ship? Lisa asked. Maya did not know, but she intended to find out. Take us closer, she said. Look for a way to get inside. Carlos flew their ship carefully toward the alien vessel. As they got closer, Maya could see that the ship was damaged. There were holes in the hull, and some sections looked like they had been hit by weapons. But the ship was still in one piece, still floating in the darkness. There, Lisa pointed to a section of the ship where the hull had been torn open. We can get inside through that hole. Carlos moved their ship next to the opening and extended the docking tube. Within minutes, they were suited up and ready to board the alien ship. Maya carried Jake's helmet with her, following its signal deeper into the vessel. The inside of the ship was dark and cold. Their lights cut through the darkness, showing corridors that were too tall for humans and walls covered with strange symbols. The air was thin but breathable, kept alive by systems that had been working for a century. The signal is coming from the center of the ship, Lisa said, checking her equipment. Whatever's down there, it's been broadcasting for a long time. They walked through the corridors, their footsteps echoing in the empty ship. Maya noticed that some of the walls had been damaged by weapons fire, but the damage looked old. This ship had been in a battle long ago, and it had lost. After walking for 20 minutes, they reached a large room in the center of the ship. Maya's lights showed a space that was bigger than her entire research vessel. In the middle of the room was a strange machine, covered with wires and blinking lights. And sitting next to the machine, his back against the wall, was a man in a military uniform. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Even in the dim light, she could see that it was Jake Morrison. He looked exactly like his pictures from 100 years ago. Same face, same build, same uniform. But his eyes were closed and he was not moving. "Jake Morrison," Maya whispered. The man's eyes opened. They were bright blue, and they looked directly at Maya. For a moment he seemed confused, like he was not sure where he was or how much time had passed. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice was rough, like he had not used it in a long time. "I'm Dr. Maya Rodriguez," she said. "We found your helmet. We followed your signal." Jake looked at the helmet in Maya's hands, and something changed in his expression. He looked sad and tired, like a man who had been carrying a heavy weight for too long. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. "This place is dangerous." Maya knelt down next to Jake. Up close, she could see that he looked exactly like he had 100 years ago, but something was wrong. His image seemed to flicker sometimes, like a bad television signal. "What happened to you?" she asked Jake. It was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at the machine next to him, and his face became hard. "During the battle on Kepler 442b, he said, "I was hit by a Zephyrian weapon." Not a normal weapon. This was something new, something they were testing. It was supposed to erase me from time, make it so I had never existed at all. Maya felt cold. She had heard stories about Zephyrian time weapons, but she had thought they were just rumors. But it didn't work, Jake continued. Instead of erasing me, it did something else. It made me unstuck in time. I started experiencing the war from different angles, different moments. Sometimes I was at the beginning of battles, sometimes at the end. Sometimes I was in places I had never been before. Lisa stepped forward. "That's impossible. Time doesn't work that way." Jake looked at her and smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Tell that to the Zephyrians. Their weapon broke something in the universe, and I got caught in the break." Maya was trying to understand what Jake was saying. "So you've been jumping through time for 100 years? "Not exactly jumping," Jake said. "More like being scattered across time. I experienced the same battles over and over, but from different perspectives. Sometimes I'm the Jake Morrison from the original battle. Sometimes I'm the Jake Morrison from 20 years later. Sometimes I'm the Jake Morrison from last week." Carlos stepped closer. "But we found evidence that you've been helping colonies, saving people. How is that possible if you're stuck reliving the same battles?" Jake's expression became more focused. "Sometimes my consciousness breaks free from the loop. When that happens, I can act on my own. I can choose where to go and what to do. I always choose to help people, to fight the Zephyrians wherever I find them." Maya looked at the machine next to Jake. It was covered with Zephyrian symbols, but she could see human modifications to it as well. Wires and circuits that looked like human technology. "What is this machine?" she asked. "It's the weapon that did this to me," Jake said. "I've been trying to understand it, trying to fix it. But every time I think I'm close to figuring it out, the loop starts again, and I forget what I've learned." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "The loop starts again?" Jake nodded. "I can feel it starting now. Soon I'll be back at the beginning of the Battle of Kepler's Ridge, and this conversation will be like a dream I can't quite remember." Maya looked at her team. They had come here to find Jake Morrison, and they had found him. But he was not just alive, he was trapped in a nightmare that had been going on for a century. "We can help you," she said. "We can get you out of here." Jake shook his head. "You don't understand. I'm not really here. I'm a ghost in the machine, a memory that refuses to die. And as long as this weapon exists, I'll keep experiencing the war over and over again." The machine next to Jake began to hum louder, and the lights on it started to blink faster. Jake's image began to flicker more frequently. "It's starting," he said. "The loop is starting again." Maya grabbed Jake's arm, surprised when she could actually touch him. "Fight it," she said. "Don't let it take you back." Jake looked at her with eyes that were both young and old, the eyes of a soldier who had been fighting for 100 years. I've been fighting it all this time, he said. But I'm getting weaker. Each time the loop starts, I lose a little more of myself. The machine's humming grew louder, and Maya could feel something changing in the air around them. Time itself seemed to be bending, twisting into shapes that her mind could not understand. Help me, Jake said, his voice getting fainter. Before it's too late. The machine's humming grew louder, and Jake's image began to fade. Maya watched in horror as the man who had been sitting next to her started to disappear like smoke. No, she said, grabbing his arm tighter. Don't go. Jake looked at her, his eyes filled with a century of pain. I can't stop it. The loop is pulling me back. But then something unexpected happened. The helmet in Maya's hands began to glow brighter, and she felt a strange connection form between her and Jake. Through that connection, she could suddenly see what Jake had been experiencing all these years. Images flooded her mind. She saw the Battle of Kepler's Ridge as it had really happened. She saw Jake fighting alongside his unit, holding the line against wave after wave of Zephyrian attackers. She saw him get hit by the strange weapon, saw his body dissolve and reform in different places on the battlefield, but that was just the beginning. Maya saw Jake appearing at other battles in other places, sometimes decades apart. She saw him at Colony 7, fighting off Zephyrian raiders who had come back to finish what they started. She saw him at Titan Station, coordinating defenses against a surprise attack. She saw him at dozens of other places, always arriving when hope was nearly gone. You've been everywhere, Maya whispered. You've been fighting this war for 100 years. Jake nodded, his image stabilizing for a moment. Every battle I fight, I learn something new. Every time I experience the same fight from a different angle, I understand more about Zephyrian tactics, about their weaknesses. But I can never use that knowledge to end the war because I always get pulled back to the beginning. Maya saw more images through the connection. She saw Jake appear at the Battle of New Terra, where human forces had been surrounded and outnumbered 10-1. In the original timeline, the battle had been lost, and 50,000 colonists had died. But Jake had appeared at the last moment, using his knowledge of Zephyrian tactics to turn the tide. She saw him at the siege of Port Royal, where Zephyrian forces had been preparing to use a weapon that would have destroyed the entire colony. Jake had appeared behind enemy lines, sabotaging the weapon before it could be used. The official report said the weapon had malfunctioned, but Maya now knew the truth. You saved them all? Maya said. Every colony, every battle, you've been the reason humanity survived. Jake's expression was sad, but at what cost? I've been fighting the same war over and over, watching the same people die over and over. Sometimes I save them, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm too late, sometimes I'm too early. I've seen every possible outcome of every battle, and I can't make it stop. Maya saw more images. She saw Jake at the Battle of Kepler's Ridge, but this time from the perspective of the Zephyrian commander. She saw the alien surprise when human tactics suddenly changed, when attacks came from directions that should have been impossible. She saw the confusion in the Zephyrian ranks when their carefully planned assault fell apart. You've been fighting them from inside their own timeline, Maya realized. You know their plans before they make them, Jake nodded. I've experienced every Zephyrian strategy, every weapon they've ever used. I know how they think, how they fight. I've become the perfect soldier, but I'm trapped in a war that never ends. The machine next to Jake began to spark, and Maya could feel the time loop trying to reassert itself. But the connection between her and Jake was growing stronger, and she could see even more of his experiences. She saw Jake at battles that had not happened yet, fights that were still in the future. She saw him defending Earth itself from a massive Zephyrian invasion that was still years away. She saw him at the final battle of the war, standing over the defeated Zephyrian emperor. You've seen the future, Maya said. You know how this all ends. Jake looked at her with eyes that held the weight of a century. I've seen many possible futures. Some where humanity wins, some where we lose, some where the war goes on forever. But I can never be sure which one is real, because I'm experiencing all of them at the same time. Maya felt tears on her cheeks. Jake Morrison was not just a soldier who had survived impossible odds. He was a man who had sacrificed his very existence to protect humanity, fighting the same war over and over, never knowing rest, never knowing peace. "There has to be a way to free you," she said. Jake shook his head. "I've tried everything. I've studied this machine for decades, tried to understand how it works. But every time I think I've figured it out, the loop starts again, and I forget what I've learned." Lisa stepped forward, her scanner in her hand. "Dr. Rodriguez, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the machine. It's not just keeping Jake in the loop, it's using him as a power source." Maya looked at the machine with new understanding. The Zephyrian time weapon had not just trapped Jake in a temporal loop, it had turned him into a living battery, using his life force to power itself. And as long as the machine existed, Jake would be trapped forever. "We have to destroy it," Maya said. Jake's eyes widened. "No, you don't understand. If you destroy the machine, you'll destroy me too. I'm part of it now. I exist only because it exists." Maya looked at the machine, then at Jake. She could see the connections between them, the way his life force was woven into the alien technology. If she destroyed the machine, Jake would die. But if she left it alone, he would be trapped forever. "There has to be another way," she said. Carlos stepped forward. "Jake, you said you've experienced every possible outcome of every battle. Have you ever experienced one where you were free?" Jake was quiet for a long time. Then slowly he nodded. "Once, just once, I experienced a timeline where the machine was modified, not destroyed. Where someone used human technology to change how it worked." Maya felt a spark of hope. "Who modified it?" Jake looked at her, and for the first time since, they had found him. He smiled. "You did." Maya stared at him in shock. "Me? But I don't know anything about Zephyrian technology." "You don't know it yet," Jake said, "but you will. I've seen you working on the machine, figuring out how to free me. I've seen you succeed." Lisa looked at her scanner readings. "Dr. Rodriguez, the machine is based on quantum entanglement principles. If we could introduce a stabilizing field, we might be able to anchor Jake's consciousness to a single timeline." Maya looked at the machine, trying to understand its alien design. It was beyond anything she had ever seen before, but Jake was right. If she had succeeded in one timeline, she could succeed in this one too. "What do I need to do?" she asked. Jake pointed to a panel on the side of the machine. "There's a control interface there. If you can connect your equipment to it, you might be able to modify the temporal field." Maya approached the machine, her hands shaking. The fate of Jake Morrison, the man who had saved humanity a dozen times over, was in her hands. She could feel the weight of a century of sacrifice pressing down on her. "I'll try," she said. Jake's image flickered again, but this time it was different. This time he was not fading away. He was becoming more solid, more real. "I believe in you," he said. "I've seen you do this before." Maya took a deep breath and reached for the control panel. It was time to free the man who had been fighting humanity's war for 100 years. Maya's hands touched the control panel of the alien machine, and immediately she felt electricity run through her fingers. The Zephyrian technology was unlike anything she had ever seen, but somehow she understood it. Through her connection with Jake's helmet, she could see how the machine worked, how it bent time and space around itself. "The temporal field is destabilizing," Lisa called out, watching her scanner. "Something's changing." Maya worked quickly, connecting her equipment to the alien controls. She could feel Jake's consciousness trapped inside the machine, scattered across 100 different timelines. In some timelines, he was still fighting at Kepler's Ridge. In others, he was defending colonies that would not be attacked for another 50 years. "I can see you," Jake said, his voice echoing strangely through the ship. "In all the timelines, I can see you working on the machine. In most of them, you fail, but in one ... I succeed," Maya finished. "I know, I can feel it." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Carlos ran to the nearest window and looked out into space. "Maya," he said, his voice tight with fear, "we have company." Maya looked up from the machine to see what Carlos was pointing at. Through the window, she could see lights moving in the darkness. Ships, lots of ships, and they were not human. Zephyrians. Jake said, "They found us." Lisa checked her scanner. "It's a whole fleet, at least 50 ships, maybe more. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Maya felt her heart sink. After following Jake's signal across half the galaxy, after finally finding him and figuring out how to free him, the Zephyrians had arrived to finish what they started a century ago. "We have to leave," Carlos said. "Our ship can't fight a whole fleet," but Maya was already back at the machine, working faster. "I'm not leaving without Jake, Maya," Jake said gently. "You have to go. If the Zephyrians capture you, they'll learn how to build more time weapons. They'll trap other humans the way they trapped me." Maya's hands moved over the controls, making connections and adjustments. She could feel the machine responding to her touch, its temporal field beginning to change. But it was not happening fast enough. 5 minutes until the Zephyrians arrive, Lisa said. Maya made a decision. Instead of trying to free Jake slowly and safely, she began forcing the machine to release him all at once. It was dangerous. If she made a mistake, Jake could be scattered across time forever, or worse, erased completely. "What are you doing?" Jake asked. "Something crazy," Maya said. "Something that might work." The machine began to hum louder, and the lights on it started, flashing in patterns Maya had never seen before. She could feel Jake's consciousness being pulled together from all the different timelines, like gathering scattered pieces of a broken mirror. "It's working," Jake said, and Maya could hear wonder in his voice. "I can feel myself becoming whole again." But then something unexpected happened. As Jake's consciousness was pulled together, Maya began to see all the battles he had fought, all the knowledge he had gained. She saw Zephyrian battle tactics, ship designs, weapon systems. She saw their weaknesses, their fears, their secrets. "Jake," she said, "I can see everything you've learned. All your knowledge about the Zephyrians. Take it," Jake said. "Use it to protect humanity." The Zephyrian fleet was getting closer. Maya could see their ships through the window now, sleek and deadly, approaching the ancient vessel where Jake had been trapped. 2 minutes, Carlos called out. Maya made the final connection, and the machine's hum became a roar. Jake's image solidified, becoming real and solid for the first time in a century. He stood up, looking exactly as he had during the original battle, but his eyes held the wisdom of 100 years of fighting. "I'm free," he said, his voice filled with amazement. "I'm actually free." But their celebration was cut short as the first Zephyrian ships reached them. Energy beams lanced out from the alien vessels, striking the ancient ship's hull. The whole vessel shook under the impact. "They're attacking," Lisa said. "Hull breach on decks 7 and 8. Jake looked at Maya, then at the machine that had held him prisoner for so long. "There's something else I can do," he said. "Something I learned during all those years in the loop." "What?" Maya asked. Jake walked back to the machine and placed his hands on its controls. "I can use this thing one more time, but not to trap. Myself, I can use it to coordinate attacks across multiple timelines simultaneously." Maya felt a chill. "That's impossible." "So was surviving for 100 years, Jake said with a grin. "Maya, I can appear on every Zephyrian ship at the same time, in this timeline and others. I can end this battle before it really starts, but what will happen to you?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. But I've been fighting this war for a century. It's time to finish it." More energy beams struck the ship, and Maya could hear the hull groaning under the assault. Through the windows, she could see Zephyrian boarding pods heading toward them. "Do it," Maya said. Jake activated the machine one last time. But instead of trapping him, it spread his consciousness across the timeline in a controlled way. Maya watched in amazement as multiple versions of Jake appeared throughout the ship, each one heading toward a different part of the vessel. Through the connection she still had with Jake's helmet, Maya could see what was happening on the Zephyrian ships. Jake was appearing on their bridges, in their engine rooms, in their weapon bays. The aliens were panicking, unable to understand how one human could be in so Many places at once. Jake was using everything he had learned during his century of imprisonment. He knew exactly where to strike each ship to disable it. He knew which systems were most vulnerable, which crew members were most important. In less than 5 minutes, the entire Zephyrian fleet was dead in space, but Maya could feel Jake growing. Weaker, spreading himself across so many timelines, was taking everything he had. "Jake," she called out. "Come back. You've won." One by one, the other versions of Jake began to fade away, their energy returning to the original. Finally, only one Jake remained, standing next to Maya in the machine room. But he looked tired, more tired than any person should ever look. "Is it over?" he asked. "It's over," Maya said. Jake smiled and sat down against the wall. "Good, I'm tired." "Of fighting." Maya knelt next to him, still holding his helmet. "What happens now?" Jake looked at the machine, which had finally gone quiet. "Now I get to find out what it's like to live in just one timeline. To experience time the way normal people do. Are you scared?" Maya asked. Jake thought about it for a moment. "A little. I've been experiencing all of time at once for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to live in just the present. But I'm ready to learn." Carlos and Lisa joined them, looking out at the disabled Zephyrian fleet. "What do we do with them?" Carlos asked. "We take them home," Jake said. "We show them to Earth's leaders. We let humanity know that the war is finally over." Maya helped Jake to his feet. He was solid now, real, existing in only one timeline. He was no longer the perfect soldier who could be everywhere at once. He was just a man, tired after fighting a war for 100 years. "Come on," Maya said. "Let's go home." They walked together toward their ship, leaving the alien machine silent and dark behind them. Jake Morrison, the soldier who had saved humanity, again and again was finally free to live his own life, and for the first time in a century, the war was truly over.